You leave the conversation, but it doesn't leave you. You replay it. You rethink it. You remember the exact words they used, the pause before they answered, the look on their face, and then you start wondering, was I being too sensitive? Was I too harsh? Did I misunderstand something? Or was I finally paying attention? Because sometimes you're not replaying the conversation because you needed better words. Sometimes you're replaying it because something in you knows the conversation opened a door, and you don't know yet if you're willing to walk through it. This is about the one you already had and can't stop replaying. Today, I want to show you how to stop replaying the same conversation by identifying what's actually still open, not by forcing closure, but by choosing your next honest move. Most of us think we're overthinking. We assume the problem is in our mind. We tell ourselves, I should just be able to let this thing go. I'm making too much of it. It probably wasn't that serious. But here's the part almost nobody talks about. Your mind may keep returning to a conversation because something remains unsaid, undecided, or unaccepted. That doesn't automatically mean the other person behaved badly. It doesn't mean you need to confront them immediately. It doesn't mean you need to end the relationship or make some big announcement. It means there may be information in the repetition. Your mind isn't trying to punish you. Sometimes it's just trying to complete something. And if you keep telling yourself, stop thinking about it, without asking what remains open, what is still unspoken, the open loop gets louder. You're trying to close the loop without looking at what created it. This is especially common if you've spent years being the reasonable one, the flexible one, the one who understands everyone else's perspective. You can explain why they acted that way. You can name their stress. You can imagine their childhood. You understand the pressure they're under. And suddenly you're sitting there with a perfectly developed explanation for their behavior and no idea what it has to do with your pain. That's where self abandonment disguises itself as maturity. You call it compassion, but sometimes it's just self abandonment. For years, I was the one who could explain everything: my mom, my relationships, the people who hurt me, all of it. I inherited that role. I watched my mom be endlessly reasonable, and the fruit of all that labor was bitterness. I remember replaying conversations for weeks, building better and better cases for why they did what they did, until I realized I could explain them perfectly and still hadn't said how it landed for me. That was the moment I stopped. Understanding them, making excuses for them, had quietly become a way of abandoning me. Understanding why someone hurt you doesn't mean it didn't hurt. You can understand the context and still acknowledge the impact. You can be compassionate and still have a boundary. You can stay calm and still tell the truth. Being steady does not mean being unaffected. It means you stay connected to yourself while something difficult is happening. When you keep replaying a difficult conversation, usually one of three things remains open. First, something you didn't say. Maybe you wanted to say, that wasn't okay. Maybe you wanted to ask a direct question. Maybe you wanted to admit that you were hurt, but you swallowed it because you didn't want to create conflict. Second, a decision you haven't made. Maybe you know you need more distance. Maybe you know the relationship has changed. Maybe you know you can't keep agreeing to something that drains you, but making the decision would force you to deal with the consequences. Third, something you haven't accepted. Maybe you're still hoping that they'll become the person you needed or the person you thought they were. Maybe you're still waiting for an apology. Maybe you're waiting for their explanation to finally make you feel better. And this is the hardest one because acceptance doesn't always feel like peace at first. Sometimes acceptance is simply admitting, this is what's happening. I wish it were different, but I'm no longer going to build my life around the hope that it will change. That can feel like grief, but can also be the beginning of self trust. Remember those three: unsaid things, undecided things, unaccepted things. Those leave open loops. Everything else today aims right at them. The first step is not to solve the conversation. The first step is to notice the open loop without blaming yourself for having it. Instead of, why am I still thinking about this? Try asking, what moment keeps returning? Is it the sentence they said? Or the moment they avoided your question? Or the way you responded? Or the moment afterwards when you realized you'd once again made yourself smaller to keep things calm? Be specific, not the whole relationship is confusing. What exact moment keeps replaying? Because vague pain is challenging to work with. Specific pain gives you something to look at. You might write, I keep replaying the moment I asked for clarity and they changed the subject. Or, I keep replaying the moment I said yes, even though I meant no. Or, I keep replaying the moment I realized I was explaining their behavior away again. That is not drama. That is just an observation. And observation is the beginning of emotional regulation. Now take your moment and run it past the three open loops. Is it something that was unsaid? What's the simplest, honest sentence you didn't say? Not a big one, just a true one. I was hurt by that. I'm not available for this anymore. I need an answer. I don't trust this yet. Or is it something you need to decide? What decision are you postponing? Continuing, taking space for yourself, asking for clarity, changing someone's level of access. Remember, not deciding is still a decision. It's usually the one that keeps you in limbo. Or is it something you haven't accepted yet? What do you know now that you didn't want to know then? This one separates confusion from grief. Maybe you're not confused about what happened. You're grieving what's happened. Maybe you're not confused about who they are. You're grieving who you hoped they'd become or who you believed they were in the beginning. You cannot solve grief by gathering more evidence. So most open loops are one of these three. Naming which one is most of the work. And if this is helping you name something you've been carrying, subscribe. This channel is about closing the open loops. And let me know, not the private details, just this. Are you replaying the conversation, the decision, or the hope attached to it? So what do you actually do with this? You choose one honest next move. Not the perfect move, not the move that guarantees they will respond well, but the next honest move. Usually it's one of these three things. You need to speak. Ask the question you avoided. Name the impact, or say, I'm not willing to continue unless we can be honest about what happened. Speaking doesn't guarantee resolution, but it can end the private argument you keep having with yourself. Or you need to decide, maybe the next move isn't a conversation, maybe it's a boundary, reducing your availability, stopping the repeated explanation, no longer offering the same access to someone who has repeatedly taken advantage of it. A boundary is not a punishment, it's information about what you will and will not participate in. Finally, release. Do you need to release the hope? This is the quietest and sometimes the most painful. Stop waiting for the apology. Stop waiting for the perfect explanation. Stop waiting for someone else to confirm what you already know. You do not need their agreement in order to trust your own experience, and you do not need to call them broken to stop taking the same pain. That's steady neutral, not aloof, not emotionally separated, just anchored enough to say, this is what happened, this is what it cost me, and this is what I'm choosing now. Here's something you can do tonight. Take a piece of paper and make 3 columns. Column 1 is what happened. Only observable facts. What was said? What was done? What did you ask? What response did you get? Don't interpret it, just the facts. Column 2, what did I tell myself it meant? I'm being difficult. They're just stressed out. If I bring this up, I'm going to create a problem. I'm being selfish. Write them down without judging them. And column 3, what do I know now? This is where self-trust returns. Maybe you know your question was reasonable. Maybe you know your body signaled discomfort before your mind admitted it. Maybe you know you've explained things enough and you don't need another 6 months of evidence. Then one sentence, my next honest move is, and keep it small. Send the message, schedule the conversation, take the space, say no, stop checking. Make the decision privately before you announce it publicly. You don't need to create a big dramatic ending. You need a clear direction. If you keep replaying a conversation, it doesn't mean anything's wrong with you, but it may mean something mattered. It may mean you were trying to understand a contradiction. They said they cared, but their actions kept hurting you. You said you were fine, but something in you kept telling the truth. The goal is not to become someone who never thinks about the hard things. The goal is to become someone who can think about them without abandoning themselves. You can reflect without spiraling. You can care without chasing. You can leave a conversation without taking responsibility for everyone else's feelings. And you can trust yourself before you have every answer. So here's your assignment. Think of the conversation you keep replaying. Write the exact moment that keeps returning. Then finish these two sentences. What remains open? And the answers are something unsaid, undecided, or unaccepted. And my next honest move is one small step. You don't need to do everything today. You don't need to confront anyone tonight. But don't keep using your uncertainty as a reason to ignore information. What conversation are you still replaying? And what is it asking you to do? This is the Liberated Life. Thanks for being here. Happy to take your questions.